So it's going to take them some time to catch up, but they've already pledged 5% of their gross domestic product, which amounts to about €1 trillion that they could start pouring in. And that's a way to use their ability to build their own defense apparatus, especially in the US and other lab. That's going to take some time. So I think in the next 6 months, we're going to be particularly challenging, especially with the US not providing missiles that are half-phase. It's going to get harder, but the Ukrainians will love it. They have no quit whatsoever. Yes, it's harder, it's stressful, but everything that I've looked at in terms of good data suggests that they're resilient. They actually, the way that the U.S. has kind of turned against them has stiffened their resolve to resist. They're turning to the Europeans for support, and we're going to muddle through, and Russia has really no chance of success, to tell you the truth.
Your book is entitled The Folly of Realism: How the West Deceived Itself About Russia and Betrayed Ukraine. So it sounds to me, Alex, though, that the betrayal of Ukraine continues with Donald Trump at the helm, and now in a fascinating turn, Europe, and specific European allies, they're stepping up into the breach, into the void that's been created, where traditionally the United States was seen as the superpower that was going to be able to defend the people, the countries that needed our help to fight against communism, to fight against autocrats, to fight against fascism. Now it's the Europeans that are stepping up and saying, oh, by the way, I want to play the door on others. But it's the Europeans who are stepping up and saying, we realize that there is a void being created with the leadership of Donald Trump, and the Americans are not coming to our aid.
I think there's probably still some wishful thinking from the Europeans. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, they've underinvested. They've kind of taken a peace dividend and relied on the U.S. to kind of carry an outsized load with regards to national security, international affairs, and in a way, a continuation of the Cold War role as the U.S. is one of the two great superpowers. I think it's going to be some time before the Europeans kind of really wrap their mind around the fact that the U.S. is not going to be involved at least for the next 3.5 years. By the way, we're almost done. We're 1/8 of the way there. I'm serious. I mean, if you think about it, we're 6 months through. It's going to get worse. Time's a ticking.
I'm glad we're in church. Let us pray.
So I think the Europeans are still wrapping their mind around the fact that the U.S. is completely unreliable. Our enemies are eyeing the opportunities that this presents, thinking through some pretty disastrous scenarios for us. One of the ones that most concerns me is what lessons China learns from this war, and that aggression pays, and that 2027, the last year of the Trump administration, might be the magic number. Both from a military hardware standpoint, the Chinese are actually investing in building the capabilities, and the kind of the mark on the wall is 27 is when they'll have all the pieces in place. But it's also the last year of Trump. 3 years of damage and all that does for our relationships with our allies. And potentially, they also think that they might be able to get a sweetheart deal. They offer him like a chain of Trump hotels, we might take it. He's that transactional. So there are huge dangers on the horizon, and I don't think the world is prepared for the absence of the United States as a good actor. And one, maybe a positive note, 3.5 years from now, we'll have roughly 3.5 years from now, we'll have a new administration. Enormous amount of rebuilding to do. Enormous. I mean, the damage is going to be vast. But
I don't want to burst that bubble, but yes, we should. Constitutionally, we should. But go on.
Yeah. Well, I think the American people will allow them to stay.
I guess if I was in church. So there's something I wanted to make sure that everybody knew here about you. You and your twin brother Congressman Eugene Newman. Speaking of holding the line in DC right now, making sure we're going to be okay. You guys came to the United States at the age of 4. Your father left the then known as the USSR back then more than 40 years ago, right? When you guys came?
This would be, let's see, this would be 46 in December.
Yeah. So your father left with the 2 boys in tow, you and your brother. And one of the things that you said, one of the many things that you said when you testified, but one of the most poignant things you said was to your father. When you said, "Do not worry, I'll be fine because I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth." And there is just something so powerful about that statement. It makes me emotional because there was a time when telling the truth meant telling the truth. And there was a time when telling the truth that we knew what the truth was, and it wasn't maligned, and it wasn't manipulated, and it wasn't distorted. When you, and this is kind of, I guess, a twofold thing for you, Alex. You're a Purple Heart recipient, you're an Iraq War veteran, and you weren't born in this United States, but you're a United States citizen. And when you see what is happening to not only our members of the military, the way that they are disrespected, the way that they are treated with derision, the way that they are not given the recognition for the sacrifices that have been made, them and their families, by the way, and their loved ones. And you also see the way that immigrants are being treated right now. So many immigrants that did do what you did. You had no obligation to serve. You didn't have to, but you and your brother did. How hard is it for you to see this happening in real time, on your watch, and to have to continue the fight? Because that's what we have to do. We have to continue the fight. But how hard is it for you to watch it happen, knowing what you've had to sacrifice, what your father sacrificed to come to the United States, and what your brother has had to do? And I will also include your lovely family and your brother's family to be constantly under attack and to be threatened with political violence. I mean, none of this is easy, and yet you continue to stay in the fray.
So it makes me angry, but it also brings out my fight. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the product of coming here as refugees and growing up in New York City, kind of typical kind of inner city youth. The fact that I served in uniform for almost 22 years, including in combat, including some very tough assignments under scrutiny and subject to Russia's intelligence operations and things of that nature. But these, in the big scheme of things, I'm just not really intimidated by these kind of attacks. They do make me angry, and they make me angry because I think it's unjust that our fellow citizens, community members, are under attack, and these are amongst the most vulnerable populations, and that this is a bully that's picking on our people, and that pisses me off, and I think that just makes me want to fight. It's one of the reasons he's in Congress. It's one of the reasons that my focus is getting veterans elected across this country so that they can continue, so that we can make sure that we start taking students some accountability, and frankly, hold these thugs accountable somewhere out there in the road. I mean, this Donald Trump is the Teflon Don, for those of you that remember that reference from New York, but he seems to get away with everything. He's slippery, but I think accountability is coming down the road, and certainly if he seems untouchable, the folks below him are accountable, and be able to hold him to account. So I think to me it's now not a time to kind of high power and withdraw, but it's a time to pick some good fights.
Sounds like a plan. So one of the things that we wanted to do was have you, the lovely audience, have a chance to ask Alice some questions. So if you have a question, I'm giving up my microphone.
Thank you both. And Alex, I'm sorry I told your story, but how long of a hike was it from one side?
It said I had, it was a 31-minute walk, and I think I made it in about 7.
You've been talking a lot about how Trump is letting it, and that upsets me a great deal, because I thought naively that Trump was going to be strongly for Ukraine. Didn't think that because he's arrogant, as some people say. But remind me, there was a pact when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. It said the UK, the USSR, and the USA would defend it from aggression. We stopped defending Ukraine from aggression long before Trump came on the scene. And that's what you might be touching on in your book that I didn't read. But we can't just fuss at Trump. I mean, look, Obama just let him have Crimea. I don't know how they could have stopped it.
So let me tell you, I think it's a good point to talk through the through line that isn't just about Trump. It goes all the way back. And I take quite a bit of time to talk about this moment in 1994 where the Ukrainians signed the Budapest Accords. It is a consistent pattern from George H.W. Bush when he traveled to Ukraine just before it voted for its independence. We're talking about months before. And he gives us this infamous shaky speech where he basically tells the Ukrainians there is no need for them to pursue their independence. They should, their aspirations that they've been struggling for centuries, set those aside. It's better for them to kind of not run off in kind of uncharted territory. And the Ukrainians dismissed that advice and voted to leave the Soviet Union, ultimately led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is a source of grievance for Vladimir Putin. But that's a good example of the fact that we were dismissive of the value of Ukraine and we're embracing the opportunity to engage with Russia. In this moment of denuclearization, the Ukrainians were they were on the fence. They were trying to figure out what to do with this massive nuclear arsenal. We're talking about the third largest nuclear arsenal, over 4,000 nuclear weapons, and they knew they couldn't maintain it, to be frank, and it would be too costly. But they were still wondering if there was some remnant that they wanted to hang on to because they were concerned about Russian imperialism, this vein of 500 years of Russia's expansion and empire building. And what did we do? We put the squeeze on the Ukrainians by working with the Russians. Ultimately, the Russians were the ones that absorbed these nuclear weapons and dismantled some of them, but some of these same aircraft that are launching missiles and bombs on Ukraine are actually the ones that the Ukrainians gave over to the Russian Federation. And we were crafty. We signed an agreement that didn't guarantee that we were going to step in to support Ukraine, but we gave some assurances that we would kind of take a look at it. So it was a kind of a sly way to minimize our ability to get dragged in. But that was, so now we're George H.W. Bush, Clinton, George Bush embraced Putin. He looked into his eyes and saw his soul. And the reason he did that is because he thought that he got some promises, some assurances that the Russians would work together with us to root out terrorism. This is in the aftermath of 9/11. And it wasn't that much longer when the Russians were paying bounties for troops that were being killed and wounded by the Taliban. So that really didn't turn out. Or in 2004, when the Ukrainians had their first revolution, and They did it in reaction to Russia's efforts to try to steal and kind of tip the scales and favor of a pro-Russian thug. We decided that in that moment we were not going to condemn Russia for their interference. So they were graduating from mischief making to hybrid warfare, and they kind of looked the other way. We also passed up on an opportunity to help the Ukrainians back then when they had a distinctly pro-Ukraine, pro-Western leader. You advanced through 2008 and the Russia-Georgia war. We very quickly after that conflict normalized relationships, or 2014 under President Obama, where really, the penalties for Russia annexing Crimea and invading eastern Ukraine were relatively modest. So there's a consistent theme here of buying into Russian exceptionalism, and I specifically talk about all these moments of the book, and some other cool things like when I'm on the Russian-Ukrainian border, monitoring these Russian operations, and Russian intelligence services are trying to run me off the road and stuff like that. So there's some interesting episodes there. But this is a consistent pattern of buying into Russian exceptionalism, succumbing to misplaced hopes and misplaced fears, and missing opportunities for a different path. And the part of the book that might be fascinating to some of the folks here, I conceive of a different approach, one that doesn't look at these individual transactions, what's immediately in front of us, like it was in George W. Bush trying to keep the Soviet Union intact because he didn't want nuclear weapons kind of floating around the world, or Clinton that wanted to denuclearize Ukraine, or Bush that wanted to make sure that the Russians were maybe helping us with counterterrorism. This is a consistent pattern that we are looking at what's immediately in front of us, whether it's the promise of some way to work together or reducing the dangers from the Russian saber rattling. So my approach is actually, what is it that really matters to us? It's our alliances, the sources of our security, the sources of trade. And I basically propose that we need to figure out a way to navigate past these short-term transactional activities to something long-term in the school of thought of neo-idealism.
Thank you.
Colonel, I'm a Vietnam era vet, and I'm very cynical. Some of my best friends' names are on the wall in Washington. I have a couple short questions, and they're connected. I don't think Donald Trump knows anything other than golf courses. Who do you think has his ear? I don't think it's our neighbor, Marco Rubio. And the second connected question is, what do you think of Ashley Moody, who replaced him? Do you have any ideas about that?
Okay, so I think he is not, let's just say Donald Trump is not a detailed guy. If it requires attention, he is not really interested in doing it. And I'll give you an example. When I was in the White House on the National Security Council, and the president has a critical role as a head of state to engage with his counterparts. We were trying to figure out, how can we actually get him to focus in on the things that advance U.S. interests, whether it's trade or security. And eventually it boiled down to these massive reams of paper, background, like every other president would read. What do you need to know about the deep backgrounds? These guys, these are brilliant leaders. I mean, like them or not, they read through their materials, they understand what the currents are, they understand, and then they focus in on the things that really matter. For Donald Trump, it really came down to offering one sentence or so that he could take away. And this is not an exaggeration. This is the way, and even in spite of that kind of preparation, the National Security Advisor would walk in and say, hey, Mr. President, this is just want to make sure you saw this, this is the one thing. So for the infamous phone call, the one thing was, this is a congratulatory call. You're congratulating you're congratulating Zelensky on his victory. That's the only thing he had to do. But he had a different plan there. He wanted to steal an election. So the folks that have influence over him, I think, one of the worst offenders is a guy named Steve Miller. who's yeah. So that's right. This is like kind of blues and ahs and stuff like that. So he is almost like a cartoon villain that is looking to fundamentally transform this country, a country born out of immigrants, into something really dark and nasty. So that's probably one of his closest advisors. I think Marco Rubio probably has a little bit of influence. He's now both the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, and his role is primary. He doesn't really spend that much time at it's not privacy. I think there's a fourth role too. I don't recall it. But the point is that he spends all his time in the White House because this is like a den of thieves, and he wants to make sure that he has some kind of influence in that kind of environment. It's really unclear. I'll tell you that for this Iranian bombing situation, it was interesting because it was clear to me that he was actually listening to some career professionals. So he could parse the folks that know nothing, or political actors and hacks. And when it really comes down to it, he listened to some of the military brass that, whether it was the CENTCOM commander or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that were laying out the options, explaining to him what the consequences were. And this has been widely reported. He wasn't taking his counsel necessarily from Pete Hegseth or some of these other characters. So he's, but that's in the moment that they caught his attention. Usually he doesn't care about these kinds of things. He only cares about, if there's a business deal or some other event. With regards to this movie situation, I clearly understand what you're alluding to. I can tell you that I constantly look for ways that I can be helpful. So right now, I think that I live in the state and I want to be helpful to the state. And I've been offering up my ability to kind of support the candidates that are running the state. I don't have any plans for 2026, but I am active in terms of helping veterans get elected across the country. And that means that we will play an instrumental role in regaining control of the House. And I'm going to look for opportunities to continue to serve. So that's the best I got for you right now.
We have a question right
So I'm a German legal immigrant here in the US, which cost me $52,000 to come in here legally. Just so you know why a lot of people come illegally here, because it's very unpaid, so expensive. And as a German, we learned again and again the playbook of the Holocaust and how Hitler started everything. So, and we've been taught in school, in high school, that whenever we see as Germans fascism rising, wherever it is, in every country where you are, we have to stand up as Germans and fight against it. So much, really I do. I would die for this country. That's how much I love it here. And already in 2015 I heard the first words sound like from my come from Hitler. I already heard it there. And I discussed with my own clients what I hear and what I'm afraid of, and it got worse and worse and worse. And it's like the playbook of Hitler when I see all the time. And I would like to go a step further. I was thinking, because it's not just Trump. He cannot be alone with that. So there must be much more behind that. It's a much, much bigger picture. So what I don't understand is that we have a huge military who stands for the American Constitution. Is there any chance that the military defending the Constitution stands up and takes over this government? Because it's not just Trump. If Trump would step back or he would die because he's old, so maybe he just goes by nature. So there is still all these other people in the government. So the danger is not over without Trump. And I see exactly the same way as you saw it. I'm not sure if we have, again, elections, normal, valid elections. I'm not sure about that. Is there a possibility for the
So I
vegetarian?
appreciate the question. I think we look to our most cherished institutions to be our saviors. Whether that's, I think that now folks are looking to the legal profession or the courts. The military is one of the most, still remains one of the most honored professions, and people understand kind of how they look up to military service. But the military is not, could never be our savior. What we can't have is a military that gets involved in politics in that way, and that's a recipe for a coup. I mean, there are too many episodes in history in which honorable militaries, effective militaries, for the good of saving their societies, launch coups. So we don't need that kind of military. We need a military that understands its role with regards. We need a military that understands its role with regards to national defense. What I can tell you, maybe put your mind at ease, maybe to scare you and put your mind at ease. The military is a hierarchy. There's a chain of command. We understand our chain of command. And at the top of that chain of command is the commander-in-chief, the President of the United States. So they're obligated to obey lawful orders. So if the President gives you a lawful order, you're the next to it. And that includes awful orders. Lawful but awful orders. So streets and streets, that's actually a lawful but awful order. But that's very, very different than what we also traded in. And what drove me to report presidential corruption is you're also obligated to disobey illegal orders. So in that regard, we could trust in our military that when they get orders to shoot people in the streets, that's blatantly illegal, that's not what they're supposed to do. And then the challenge is there's a lot of room in between. And in that regard, there are unfortunately, there probably are going to be instances in which Trump putting troops in the streets, just having that kind of, setting those kind of conditions is a dangerous precedent. Because the military is not trained for these kinds of missions. It's not trained for domestic policing or anything of that nature. And it takes a huge amount of discipline. And Trump is looking to politicize the military. There was this, he gave a kind of a really gut-wrenching speech at Fort Bragg recently, in which he kind of start to cheer and rally around him. And unless you have leaders that are going to enforce discipline and hold the line, we have some problems in front of us. I was particularly critical of our military brass that nobody resigned in protest over that. Because that's what, in those kinds of situations, that's what you should do. You shouldn't put your own self-interest in front of what your mission is or what your duty is to the country. So we're going to have some challenges in front of us. I think it's just going to it's going to get worse. And part of part of the heart of your question is there are lots of terrible people in the Trump administration, but there are also lots of good Americans, folks that didn't understand necessarily what they were signing up for, folks that were apathetic, meaning that they didn't see a stake. 90 million of us didn't show up to vote, and they didn't see the reason for it. It's already maybe bad for them, and they didn't think it was going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse for a lot of Americans that are going to lose health insurance, SNAP benefits, all these that are their communities are being disrupted and tormented through these law enforcement operations. And the complacent folks also that thought that Trump might deliver something for them, whether it's inflation cuts or stock portfolios. But Trump does not leave a lot of room for fence sitters. He is not. He's going to make things. He's going to make you get off the fence. So you could be one of those folks, those awful folks that embrace what's being done in our communities, or you could be those millions of people that are starting to show up in the streets and reject and we're seeing that and display people power. That's the kind of America that I think that you love and you're willing to sacrifice for. That I am also, and that's one of the reasons I think we're gonna navigate through here, because I think the American people, as they wake up, as we see this surge of people power, that's not something that Trump is ready for. It's hard. He doesn't do hard, and that's how we navigate our way through this.
Thank you so much. We have time for just 2 or 3 more questions. So if we ask them really quickly, ARush.
Colonel, despite the fact that you're retired, can you tell us what the rank and file think of the new Secretary of Defense? Other than a rah-rah speech from the president. And the other question I have is, what's the level of anti-Semitism currently in the military?
So Pete Hegseth is the least qualified Secretary of Defense this country has ever had, and the rank and file, like soldiers, troops. We're talking about young 18-year-olds. Some of them actually like the fact that this guy, younger, good-looking, physically fit, shows up and runs with them. So to them, that's like cool that the Secretary of Defense does. But that's really one of the worst things you could do, because that is somebody that is part of a national command authority. He actually has authorities in his own right to defend the country, and he's got a lot of important things to do. He doesn't need to be running the streets. And actually, a lot of that's for show, by the way. It's a good photo op, and he doesn't actually go for the run. He doesn't need to be worried about DEI or things of that nature. We want a diverse military, so we want to pick the best and brightest from this nation from every corner, so that they can serve and defend us all. So I think that yes, maybe there's a kind of a base layer that might think that Secretary looks cool, but nobody that's actually served, no professional thinks that this guy is competent. And my interactions with my colleagues tell me that it is utter chaos. And you can see that in that, I'm not sure how many of you saw that press conference, the second one, with Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs King. And the stark contrast between this guy that looked like a raving lunatic on the one hand, and the cool professionalism of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, earnestly trying to answer questions, not concealing anything, just consummate professional. And this is the guy that Trump thought was going to be his yes man and stuff like that. But that's who we have. Phil, we have some awesome professionals serving in the military, and they're just going to try to do the best they can and navigate through, regardless of how incompetent or chaotic the political leadership is. With regards to anti-Semitism, I don't want to be dismissive, because I'm certainly well aware of what's been going on in this country since October 7th, and I think it's kind of a fringe minority. Still, it's not something that's embraced by the left or the center or the right. But my experience in the military is, I didn't sense any direct anti-Semitism. We are in a predominantly Christian country, and there are folks that run more conservative or churchgoers and things of that nature that kind of embrace like-minded younger officers, but that's not explicit or even implicit anti-Semitism. I heard some kind of anti-Semitic tropes, but not necessarily directed at me and things of that nature. And I make sure I let those young soldiers know that I corrected them and it didn't happen again. But it is not kind of a thing. I think that's one of the beautiful things about the military, is that it is a melting pot. Everybody serves from all sorts of different corners of our society. The Jewish population is disproportionately represented, actually. We're a tiny fraction of the American public, but we're a significant percentage of the force. So that wasn't part of my kind of experience for more than 2 decades.
Yeah, quick question.
Actually, you answered what I was going to ask regarding the politicization of the military. So I'll ask something else. How do you see the end of Putin?
Okay. So I'll answer. I'll maybe add a little bit to the politicization and the Putin question also. So I'm actually very concerned about the politicization of the military, because it has a couple of different effects. First of all, we don't want our military to be perceived as a Republican military or a Democrat military. They serve it. Nobody knows what, I would say I was probably even an inconsistent voter, because this whole idea that, that's a political act, you don't necessarily want to participate in that. We took it too far, I think. And now it's being drawn into the political fray. It's going to mean that, folks that are not, or that kind of an ideological belief of like, well, that's not where I want to serve, because that's a modern Republican military. It's bad. That means we can't actually get, our best and brightest in military service. It's also, to me, particularly dangerous because there's a condition in which more troops in more streets around this country is a powder keg, and it's a recipe for disaster. For much of the military, the problems in front of them are, the military is a hammer, and the problems in front of them are nails. We don't need that kind of, we want that oriented on our enemies. So it is something deeply concerning, and what I spend some of my time doing is actually trying to undergird the training that I received to disobey legal orders, report something wrong. And the way I do that is through my organizations is making sure that those officers that were enlisted that are in that position, they know they have a safety net. They know that the nation's best and brightest legal counsels, constitutional lawyers will be in their corner. So I'm very concerned about this, and this issue comes up a lot. With regard to Putin, I don't think he's under that much of a threat. He's still quite popular, actually. Polls quite well, envious polling numbers for kind of a Western leader in the mid-60s or higher. This is one of the reasons why he can actually walk away from this war and still survive, because not only does he poll high, but he hasn't even tapped his repressive capabilities. And he's got, thousands and thousands of interior troops, the National Guard, intelligence services. If there was any hint of somebody resisting him, he could crush it. He doesn't even have to do that. So I think we have a situation in which he's likely to be around for some time. I think through the beginning of the war to present day, I think this is probably the beginning of the end of Putin and Putinism, just because the cost of this war is so catastrophic. But in terms of personal risk, unfortunately, he's likely to be around for certainly his current term, but 2036 is the idea.
We'll take this last question.
How should each of us act now? A, in regard to Ukraine, there's your foundation here, right now, this foundation, but as specifically as possible. And two, generally, context of this is we are the cavalry now. It's not the courts, not the Supreme Court, and the district courts are a different matter. It's not the other branches of government. And what are your plans for the 4th of July? And what do you think is the appropriate way to celebrate it or mark it?
Okay, so look, I think, we operate within our means, within our capabilities, within our expertise, and I think that's everything from letting your electeds know there might be something kind of even a minimal, a small modest contribution on a regular basis, because a lot of this war is being conducted with the Ukrainians producing what they need for the war effort. I mean, there are regular drives for drones and things of that nature. That's a meaningful way to contribute, because in aggregate, individually it might not seem like much, but in aggregate, it actually floats the Ukrainian war effort. It's shocking how much of what we see today with regards to Ukraine, their survival and their perseverance, was from the beginning of the war in 2014. It was civil society that actually floated the war. There was no military. It was a tiny force. We're talking about, at one point, I interviewed the president at that time, the Ukrainian president, acting president, and he said he had 6,000 troops at his disposal. But the country itself surged resources, surged its energy, surged its contributions to be able to float the war. And we as Americans can do that too, and I'm not saying it has to be major contributions, but think about your fellow Americans that feel like you. Beyond that, I mean, look for opportunities to participate in these protests. It's not just for you and your contribution, but it gives license to other Americans to believe that they're not alone, and they're not, they're part of a bigger kind of resistance and a pushback to the Trump administration. Don't just participate in kind of the traditional, the kind of first Tuesday in November. There are elections all throughout the year to kind of, especially now, more important than ever, to brush back the fact that we have special elections on almost a regular basis. Seek those out, participate, because this is what the politicos, the analysts are looking at to read the tea leaves, and that's what tribes like Tom Tillis, when he resisted Trump on this ugly budget, is because he knew it was going to be costly for him anyway, and he was not going to win, and he pushed back at him. So I think we want to keep sending those messages. July 4th, I'm going to be taking a trip with my wife someplace.
Well, I want to give you guys the last word, both of you. If Katie, you want to say something, or Alex, if you'd like to wrap this up, that would be great.
I'm just going to say that maybe I come across as either kind of cavalier or overly optimistic. I don't think so. I think it's the fact that I've got a pretty good beat on the American people. It's one of the awesome things about having this book come out and literally crisscrossing the country. Maybe it's the people that just come to my events. I think it's bigger than that. I see people out, and I think that I think we are a massive country that's been too comfortable and are waking up to the dangers and the realities, and are looking for ways to be able to help. So that gives me a lot of kind of I see a path ahead out of the disaster, out of the kind of Rome is burning scenario that we could get out of this and rebuild. Thank you.
We are a community, and we are grateful for people like Mitch and Books and Books for giving us, again, the space to be together. That's a critical part of the fight, and I'm often asked why I continue to fight and why I continue to rattle cages. And I say, I know that all is not lost, because when I see somebody like Alex Vindman, his spectacular wife Rachel, when I see other friends like Joyce Vance and Mary Trump and others who haven't run away. They're not hiding, they're fighting back. When I see the millions of people coming out for the No Kings protests, they're showing that we are building a different kind of community together, and one that shows that tolerance and love is actually just as strong, if not stronger, than the hate that they're trying to impose upon all of us. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you both. You inspire all of us. And all of you guys out there inspire us to make us continue to do what we do. So we thank you. Alex has signed a whole bunch of books. So if you can't wait, you can pick up one of his books. But I know he'll also be around if you'd like to see him.
He does a nice job.
For you. Again, thank you so much. And we'll see you.
Did you know they canceled her show?
Oh, really?
On MSNBC, and she's a graduate in law.
Graduate of what?
UM.
Oh, really?
Maybe. Her husband is a neurologist, UUD. I read about it. Oh, there he is.
So there will be a big crowd of people trying to leave all at the same time. When I go through the side door, let's go through that door. Because it's just too crowded here. Go to the bathroom too if you need to.
Yeah, me too. I need to go to the bathroom. No más en mañana. It was, you all need no.
Talk to you. I think it's on the other side. Yes. So many people there. Wow. Can you imagine when they're all coming to the bathroom? Did you lock the door?
Yep.
Make sure we don't have a stream of people coming in.
Right. He's still fishing nicely. Like a 16-year-old.
Yeah. Let me finish. You want to use it too?
Yeah. Oh, yes, very much.
Okay. So
Don't go out.
I'm not going anywhere, relax.
So what do you think?
I think it was worthwhile coming and listening to him, yeah.
He had some other things too. I saw. There's a lot of times he had some interesting people, but it's like you have to buy the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I was kind of surprised. It was one of the first ones that you can come. Yeah, you want to fill it up. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think he should do it often, but he doesn't.
It takes also resources, everything, you know. He's already stretched enough with all these.
Now as he gets the little, he got what's her name, Rachel.
You ready?
Yeah. So we can go out.
There's two of you in there.
Family,
Where is? Oh, that's the way out. Yeah, let's go before. It will jam up all the. Thank you. Will jam up the traffic. Oh, I told you, right?
Yeah. You told me it was gonna rain.
Yeah.
Let me get mine. You said it, right?
Yeah.
Here. And I get you and the umbrella.
You have the umbrella?
Yeah, I have one too.
Yeah, so
Perfect. I just don't know.
now they will jam the street through here. Take mine.
Can you open?
You know how to open this?
Yeah.
Try this.
This is a good one you got.
Okay.
Be careful, you can slip on the step. Hold on to me.
Let's go.
Where's my car? Oh, my car's perfect. The car's in a perfect place. Once I park, everybody else parks. You know?
Yeah.
Keep it in the car. I like to keep them in the car.
Fine, let's go to there. So,
Let's look at that. What do you think?
yes.
I think we have some other good ones coming up too.
Yeah, okay. Let me guide you out, okay?
Yeah. Are you
Good.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. You okay?
Some of these umbrellas have had better days. One is more screwed up than the other.
No, that Miami, that one from.
One is good, yeah. The UN one is good.
One thing when they had the labels and stuff, if you wanted to go with that, you know?
Yeah.
And he does a good job, what's his name? Mitch?
Yeah.
It's interesting with the old crowd that was, huh?
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
Very highly. He's
He's impressive, isn't he?
doing the best that he can.
And I didn't know, I forgot his twin brother is
Congressman?
congressman in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
They kicked him out too.
He was also in the army?
Yeah, both enlisted. And this one, he went, I don't know about the brother, but he went to Iraq and fighting in Iraq.
Yeah.
He was in charge of Ukraine. He's written a couple of books. With his wife, so
Yeah. Looks like she's Russian or Ukrainian or something.
look how nicely. What timing, huh?
Yeah. It's good that you
I'm
left.
not sure whether we'll play by ear in terms of they might cancel, they say, the fireworks.
Really?
The next number of days supposed to be raining. So you see
We'll
now
survive without it.